The smell hit me first. That unmistakable medicinal odor mixed with something else, something wrong. Standing in my sister Elaine's bedroom doorway, I froze, keys still dangling from my fingers. I wasn't supposed to be here. She'd made that abundantly clear during our last fight 3 weeks ago. But her neighbors had called, concerned they hadn't seen her in days, and I still had the emergency key. Elaine? My voice echoed through the apartment. Nothing. The bedroom looked like a hurricane had swept through, clothes scattered everywhere, empty takeout containers stacked on the nightstand, prescription bottles tipped over. My stomach twisted. My little sister had always been meticulous, even as a child. This wasn't like her. That's when I noticed the closet door. Unlike the chaotic room, it was perfectly shut, with a brand new padlock securing it. My heart pounded as I approached. What was so valuable that she needed to lock it away in this mess? I found the small key on her keyring. It took 4 tries before the right one clicked. The lock fell open in my palm, heavy and ominous. I hesitated, suddenly afraid of what I might find. Drugs? Money? Something worse? When I pulled the door open, the smell intensified. But it wasn't drugs. It wasn't anything I could have imagined. The closet was immaculate, pristine, and covering every wall were hundreds of photographs of me, my childhood, my wedding, my children. Recent photos I didn't even know existed. In the center stood a small table, like an altar, with candles and my high school graduation photo surrounded by wilted flowers. But what made my knees buckle was the journal open on the floor, Elaine's familiar handwriting filling the pages. Day 47 without Sarah. I watched her daughter's soccer game today. She looks just like Sarah did at that age. They never saw me. They never do. It's better this way, now that she's made it clear I don't exist to her anymore. I sank to the floor, the journal trembling in my hands. What had I done? Growing up, Elaine had always been in my shadow, literally and figuratively. 5 years younger, 3 inches shorter, and infinitely quieter. While I was captain of the debate team and prom queen, Elaine was the girl who spent lunches in the library. Not that she wasn't bright, she was brilliant actually. Just different. Sensitive in a way that made our father sigh with impatience and our mother hover with worry. Sarah will look out for you, Mom always told her, squeezing my shoulder with that look that said, "Don't let me down," and I didn't. Through elementary school, I was her protector. I scared away bullies and included her in games when other kids wouldn't. I was the perfect big sister, at least that's what I told myself. Things changed in high school. I was busy with friends, activities, and eventually, David, my high school sweetheart turned husband. Elaine faded into the background of my life, a shadow I acknowledged at family dinners, but otherwise barely noticed. After our parents died, Dad from a sudden heart attack my senior year of college, Mom from cancer 3 years later, Elaine and I were all that remained of our family. We should have grown closer. Instead, the distance widened into a chasm. "You never needed me," Elaine said once, during a rare vulnerable moment at Mom's funeral. "You were always enough on your own." I dismissed it as grief talking. Now, staring at this shrine she'd built to our fractured relationship, I realized she'd been telling me something important, and I'd been too self-absorbed to hear it. The last time I'd seen Elaine was at my son Tyler's birthday party 3 weeks ago. She'd shown up with an expensive telescope. "Too much," David had whispered, and Tyler had been ecstatic. But then I'd found her showing him how to use it in the backyard, whispering something about how the stars were really our ancestors watching over us. "Don't fill his head with that nonsense," I'd snapped, the champagne making me cruel. "Mom and Dad aren't stars, Elaine. They're dead." The hurt in her eyes should have stopped me, but I'd continued. "And you need to stop with these extravagant gifts and weird ideas. We're raising him in the real world." She'd left without saying goodbye. When I called the next day, half apologetic, half defensive, she hadn't answered, or the day after. Eventually, I'd convinced myself she was being dramatic, as usual. Now, surrounded by evidence of her devotion, I felt shame burn through me like acid. I picked up my phone and dialed her number again, straight to voicemail. Where was she? I spent that night in Elaine's apartment, sleeping fitfully on her couch. In the morning light, I began a more thorough search. The kitchen cabinets contained exactly 3 plates, 2 cups, and a box of herbal tea. The refrigerator held nothing but condiments and a shriveled apple. How long had she been living like this? I found her medication in the bathroom, antidepressants, anxiety pills, something for sleep. All with recent dates. At least she'd been taking care of that much. But where was she now? I called her workplace, a small publishing house where she edited manuscripts. The receptionist's voice turned cool when I identified myself as Elaine's sister. Elaine took a leave of absence 2 weeks ago, she said. Personal reasons. She didn't mention you'd be checking in. The implied criticism stung. Did she say where she was going? No, but Marcus might know more. They're close. Marcus. The name was vaguely familiar. Had Elaine mentioned him at some family gathering I'd half listened to? I found Marcus's contact in Elaine's phone, which she'd left charging by her bed. When he answered, his voice was guarded. Who is this? Why do you have Elaine's phone? After I explained, his tone didn't warm. You're Sarah? The sister? He said it like I was a disease. Yes, I'm worried about her. Do you know where she is? A long pause. Why do you care now? The question hit like a slap. She's my sister. Funny, that's not how she describes it. His voice hardened. Look, Elaine is safe. That's all you need to know. She needed space from certain influences in her life. Meaning me. It wasn't a question. You said it, not me. He sighed. She's at the Lakeside Retreat Center. It's a wellness place upstate. But Sarah? If you actually care about her, maybe consider what she needs right now, not what will make you feel better about yourself. The line went dead. I stood in Elaine's silent apartment, surrounded by the evidence of her absence, and felt something crack inside me. What did I really know about my sister's life? About her struggles? About what she needed? I looked again at the closet shrine. It wasn't creepy, I realized now. It was desperately sad. This was how she'd stayed connected to a family that had drifted away from her, through photographs and memories and silent observation from a distance we'd created. 3 hours later, I was driving north, the address of Lakeside Retreat Center plugged into my GPS, and a hollow feeling in my chest where certainty used to be. The retreat center looked nothing like I'd imagined. No New Age crystals or wind chimes, just a cluster of modern cabins surrounding a main lodge, all nestled against a pristine lake. The autumn leaves reflected in the water, creating a mirror world of reds and golds. At reception, I hesitated before giving my name. Would Elaine have left instructions to keep me away? I'm here to see my sister, Elaine Winters. The young man checked his computer. Ah, Miss Winters is in cabin 7. She's probably in group session now, but that ends at 4. He smiled. You can wait in the main lounge if you'd like. No warnings, no restrictions. I felt oddly disappointed. Had I expected Elaine to barricade herself against me? Maybe I had. I found cabin 7 easily enough, a small, neat structure with a porch swing and potted mums by the door. Through the window, I could see a neatly made bed and books stacked on a side table. I resisted the urge to peek at the titles. At 4 o'clock, I positioned myself on a bench with a view of the main building. People began to emerge in 2s and 3s, talking quietly or walking in contemplative silence. Then I saw her. Elaine looked different. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore no makeup. She was thinner than I remembered, but there was a calmness to her movements that seemed new. She walked alongside an older woman who was gesturing emphatically about something, and, this was the shocking part, Elaine was laughing. When was the last time I'd seen my sister laugh like that? Open and unguarded? I stood, suddenly uncertain. What right did I have to intrude on this moment of peace she'd found? But before I could retreat, she turned and saw me. The laughter vanished. Her body went rigid. The older woman touched her arm, in concern, but Elaine shook her head slightly and said something I couldn't hear. Then she walked toward me, her face a careful blank. Sarah. No warmth, no surprise. How did you find me? I went to your apartment. Your neighbors were worried. I swallowed. I was worried. Were you? She tilted her head, studying me like I was a stranger. That's new. The coldness in her voice made me flinch. This wasn't my little sister who had followed me around with adoring eyes. This was someone else, someone I'd helped create with years of neglect. Elaine, I stopped, suddenly aware that I had no script for this. All my life I'd known exactly what to say, how to take charge of any situation. But standing before my sister's guarded eyes, I was lost. "I found your closet," I finally said. Something flickered across her face: embarrassment, defiance, pain. "You had no right." "I know. I'm sorry." The words felt inadequate. "Can we talk, please?" She glanced back at the retreat center, then at me. I could almost see her weighing her options, calculating the cost of letting me in versus shutting me out. Finally, she nodded toward the lake. "There's a path around the water. We can walk." It wasn't forgiveness or even warmth, but it was something. A small opening. I'd take it. We walked in silence for the first 10 minutes, the crunch of leaves under our feet the only sound. The lake stretched beside us, still and reflective. I waited for Elaine to speak first, but she seemed content with the silence, her eyes fixed on the path ahead. Finally, I couldn't stand it anymore. "This place seems nice." "It is." Her voice was measured, careful. "It's a mental health retreat, not a spa, in case you were wondering." I wasn't. I stopped myself. Defensive reactions wouldn't help. "How long have you been here?" 12 days. I'm staying for 30. She glanced at me. "Marcus shouldn't have told you where I was." "He almost didn't. He's protective of you." A small smile touched her lips. "He's a good friend. One of the few people who sees me." The emphasis on sees wasn't subtle. I deserved that. "Elaine, about your apartment, the closet." She stopped walking, her body tense. "It's not what you think." "I don't know what to think. It looks like a shrine? Something a crazy person would make?" Her voice rose slightly. "Or maybe just something a lonely person would create to feel connected to the family that forgot she exists?" The raw pain in her words silenced me. We stood facing each other on the path, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the ground. "I didn't forget you exist," I said finally. "Didn't you?" She shook her head. "When was the last time you called me just to talk? Not because you needed a babysitter or because Mom's birthday was coming up and you felt obligated to plan something together, just to check in?" I opened my mouth, then closed it. I couldn't remember. That's what I thought. She started walking again, faster now. "I've spent my whole life orbiting around you, Sarah. The perfect daughter. The successful one. The one who had it all figured out." "That's not fair," I protested, hurrying to keep up. "I've had my own struggles." "Of course you have. Everyone does." She stopped again, turning to face me. "But you never let me in. You never needed me. Do you have any idea what that's like, to love someone who doesn't need you back?" Her words hit me like physical blows. Had I really made her feel so unnecessary, so invisible? "The pictures," I said softly. "You've been watching us, coming to Tyler's games." She looked away, embarrassment coloring her cheeks. "Sometimes. I stay in the background. I just wanted to be part of your lives, even if you didn't want me there." "Why didn't you just talk to me?" "I tried." The force of her response startled a nearby bird into flight. "God, Sarah, I've been trying my whole life. But you're always so busy, so perfect, so complete without me. And whenever I did try to connect, you made it clear I was doing it wrong." "That's not true," I said automatically. But even as the words left my mouth, I knew they were a lie. Memories flooded back. Elaine bringing soup when I had the flu, and me complaining it wasn't the kind I liked. Elaine offering to babysit, and me giving her a detailed list of rules as if she couldn't be trusted. Elaine trying to share her thoughts about Mom's death, and me shutting her down because her spirituality made me uncomfortable. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I didn't realize." "No," she agreed, her voice tired now rather than angry. "You didn't." We resumed walking, the silence between us different now, heavier with unspoken truths, yet somehow less tense. When we reached a small dock extending into the lake, Elaine sat at the edge, her feet dangling above the water. After a moment's hesitation, I joined her. "Why are you here, Sarah? Really?" I looked out over the water, gathering my thoughts. "I was worried when I couldn't find you. And then when I saw the closet, I realized how little I knew about what you've been going through. It scared me." It scared you to realize I'm a real person with real feelings? Her tone was bitter. No, I said carefully. It scared me to realize how badly I've failed you as a sister. She was quiet for so long that I wondered if she'd heard me. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible over the gentle lapping of the water. I tried to kill myself 3 weeks ago, after your son's party. The world seemed to stop. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. What? I didn't go through with it. I called the crisis line instead. She still wouldn't look at me. That's why I'm here. Voluntary commitment after a near attempt. Horror washed over me in icy waves. Elaine, my God, why didn't you call me? Now she did turn, her eyes filled with a mixture of disbelief and resignation. Why would I call the person whose rejection pushed me to that edge? The truth of it struck me like a physical blow. Our argument at Tyler's party, my casual cruelty, the way I dismissed her afterward. Had I really almost lost my sister because I was too self-absorbed to see her pain? I didn't know, I whispered, tears filling my eyes. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. No, she said softly. You didn't want to know. There's a difference. As the sun began to set over the lake, casting everything in golden light, I realized that finding my way back to my sister would be much harder than the drive up here. It would require something I'd never been good at, admitting I wasn't the hero of this story. I was the villain. Elaine agreed to let me stay the night in the retreat's visitor cabin, though I sensed it was more out of exhaustion than forgiveness. The next morning, we met for breakfast in the main lodge, an awkward, stilted affair where we both pushed eggs around our plates and avoided eye contact. You should go home, she said finally. I appreciate you checking on me, but I need this time to heal, without you. The dismissal stung, but I nodded. I understand. Can I call you, though? Maybe we could talk once a week? She looked skeptical. Why? What's changed since yesterday? It was a fair question. What had changed? Everything and nothing. I still didn't know how to be the sister she needed. I still carried the same instincts that had driven us apart. But something had shifted inside me, a recognition that had been missing before. I want to try, I said simply. I want to know you, Elaine. The real you, not just my idea of you. She studied me for a long moment, then nodded slightly. Sundays at 7. You can call then. But Sarah. Her eyes held mine steadily. If you miss a call without a real emergency, we're done. I can't keep investing in someone who won't invest back. It was a reasonable boundary, and yet it terrified me. Could I really commit to this? What if I failed her again? As I drove home that afternoon, the autumn landscape blurring past my windows, I felt a strange mixture of dread and determination. For the first time, I was seeing my relationship with Elaine clearly, not as the supportive big sister I'd imagined myself to be, but as the dismissive, self-centered person I'd actually been. The realization was painful but necessary, and it left me with an impossible question. How do you make amends for a lifetime of casual neglect? When I arrived home, David and the kids greeted me with curious questions about Aunt Elaine. I gave vague answers about her taking some time for herself, and retreated to our bedroom, suddenly exhausted. David followed me, closing the door behind him. What's really going on, Sarah? I sank onto the bed, the facade crumbling. Through tears, I told him everything. The shrine in the closet, Elaine's suicide attempt, the years of neglect she'd described. He listened without interruption, his face growing increasingly troubled. When I finished, he sat beside me, taking my hand. I had no idea it was that bad. Neither did I admitted. Or maybe I did, and I just didn't want to see it. He was quiet for a moment. You know, I've always thought there was something off about how you talk about Elaine, like she's a responsibility, not a person you love. His observation hit home. Was that how I'd been treating her? Like an obligation? I do love her, I protested weakly. I know you do. But Sarah, he hesitated. Do you like her? As a person? The question caught me off guard. Did I like my sister? I'd never really thought about it. She'd always just been Elaine. Sensitive, needy Elaine, who complicated family gatherings with her odd comments and intense emotions, who made me feel simultaneously guilty and annoyed, who looked at me with eyes that expected something I didn't know how to give. I don't know, I admitted finally. I don't think I ever tried to. David squeezed my hand. Maybe that's where you start then. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing the closet shrine, the carefully arranged photographs, the journal entries chronicling Elaine's lonely vigil on the periphery of my life. Had she really been at Tyler's soccer games? Had she seen Emma's dance recitals? Had she been there all along, watching from a distance, too afraid of rejection to approach? The thought broke my heart, and with that heartbreak came a realization. I didn't know my sister at all, but I wanted to. Sunday at 7 o'clock, I called Elaine as promised. She sounded surprised when she answered, as if she'd expected me to forget. "How are you?" I asked, trying to sound natural and not like I'd spent the past hour rehearsing what to say. "Better, I think." Her voice was cautious. "The program here is intense but helpful. How are things at home?" We made awkward small talk for a few minutes. The weather, the kids, a book she was reading. Then I took a deep breath and asked the question I'd been pondering all week. "Elaine, what do you like to do? I mean, for fun?" The silence that followed was so long I thought we'd been disconnected. "Why are you asking me that?" she finally said. "Because I realized I don't know." My voice cracked slightly. "I don't know what makes you happy or what you dream about or anything real about you. And I want to." Another long pause. "I like photography," she said finally. "Nature, mostly. I have some pieces in a small gallery downtown." I blinked in surprise. "You're a photographer? Since when?" "Since college. I majored in English and minored in fine arts, remember?" I didn't remember. Had she told me? Had I forgotten, or never really listened in the first place? "I'd love to see your work sometime," I said, meaning it. "Really?" The skepticism in her voice was painful to hear. "Really." Our conversation continued, stilted at first, then gradually easier. She told me about her favorite hiking trails, where she captured most of her images, about the publishing job that paid the bills but left her creatively unfulfilled, about Marcus, who I learned was her best friend from college, and to my surprise, gay, not a romantic interest as I'd vaguely assumed. "He's been trying to convince me to quit my job and focus on photography full-time," she said, a note of animation entering her voice. "He thinks I could make it." "Could you?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Maybe. I've been saving and I sell enough prints to supplement income, but—" She trailed off. "It's scary to leap without a safety net." "You could stay with us while you get established," I offered impulsively. "The guest room is just sitting there." As soon as the words left my mouth, I regretted them. Not because I didn't mean the offer, but because it was exactly the kind of thing the old Sarah would say, swooping in with a solution, taking charge, making decisions for others. "Sure enough," Elaine's voice cooled. "I don't need charity, Sarah." "It's not charity," I backpedaled. "It's family, but I understand if you'd rather not." The conversation ended soon after, more cordial than warm. I'd made a misstep, but at least we'd talked. It was a beginning. The next Sunday I called again, and the Sunday after that. Each conversation was a little less strained, a little more real. I learned that Elaine loved spicy food but hated cilantro, that she volunteered at an animal shelter on Saturdays, that she'd dated a man named Richard for 2 years before breaking it off because he wanted children and she didn't. "You don't want kids?" I asked, surprised. "I always thought you'd be a great mom." "Why?" she challenged. "Because I'm nurturing? Or because you can't imagine a fulfilled life without children?" The question made me uncomfortable. "I just thought, you're so good with Tyler and Emma." "I love being an aunt," she said more gently. "But I've never felt that maternal pull. Besides," her voice took on a bitter edge, "given our family history, maybe it's better not to pass on those genes." "What do you mean?" She sighed. "Come on, Sarah. Dad's alcoholism, Mom's depression, my issues, even you with your anxiety that you pretend doesn't exist." I don't have anxiety, I said automatically. Right. Her tone made it clear she didn't believe me. That's why you alphabetize your spice rack and can't sleep if the dishes aren't done and plan vacations with color-coded itineraries. I wanted to argue, but something stopped me. Was she right? Did I have anxiety? The thought had never occurred to me. I was just organized, efficient. Wasn't I? Anyway, Elaine continued, I made my peace with it. Not everyone needs to be a parent to have a meaningful life. The conversation left me unsettled, not just because of the anxiety comment, which hit closer to home than I wanted to admit, but because I realized how much I'd assumed about Elaine's desires and dreams, all based on projections of my own values. What else had I gotten wrong about her? When Elaine completed her 30 days at the retreat center, I offered to drive her home. To my surprise, she accepted. The woman who emerged from cabin 7 with a small suitcase looked healthier than when I'd last seen her face fuller, her movements more confident. She'd cut her hair into a short bob that framed her face nicely, highlighting cheekbones I'd never noticed before. You look good, I said as she slid into the passenger seat. Thanks, I feel better. She buckled her seatbelt and looked straight ahead. I'm still on medication, and I'll be doing outpatient therapy twice a week, but I'm okay. The drive back to the city was quiet, but not uncomfortable. Elaine gazed out the window, occasionally pointing out spots where she'd like to stop and photograph someday. I made mental notes of each location, an idea forming in my mind. When we reached her apartment building, I hesitated. Do you want me to come up? Help you get settled? She seemed to consider it, then nodded. Actually, yes. There's something I want to show you. Her apartment had been cleaned, probably by her, before she left for the retreat. The chaos I'd encountered was gone, replaced by the neat, minimalist space I remembered. As we entered, she headed straight for the bedroom. I need to deal with the closet, she said, her back to me. I can't keep living like that. I followed her, heart pounding. The padlock was gone, the door slightly ajar. Elaine took a deep breath and pulled it open. The shrine was exactly as I'd left it. Photos covering every surface, the small altar in the center, the journal on the floor. Elaine stared at it for a long moment, then turned to me. I need to take it down, she said quietly. Will you help me? There was something ritualistic about the way we dismantled the shrine. Carefully removing each photograph, Elaine would study it briefly before placing it in one of two piles, keep or discard. Some made her smile, others made her wince. I worked silently alongside her, following her lead. When we reached the altar with my graduation photo, she paused. I was so proud of you that day, she said softly. You were valedictorian, and you gave that amazing speech about reaching for the stars. I thought you were the most brilliant person in the world. The memory of that day came flooding back. The hot auditorium, the scratchy gown, the nerves as I approached the podium. I remembered scanning the audience and seeing my parents. But had I looked for Elaine? Had I even thought about what the day meant to her? I was 14, she continued, tracing the frame with her finger. I decided that day that I wanted to be just like you when I grew up. It took me years to realize that was impossible. She placed the photo in the discard pile, and years more to realize it wasn't even desirable. The statement should have hurt, but instead, it felt like truth. We weren't meant to be the same person. We never had been. As we worked, I noticed something about the photographs. They captured moments of genuine joy. My wedding day, laughing with bridesmaids. Tyler's birth, my face exhausted but radiant. Emma's first steps. A family picnic at the lake. These are all happy moments, I observed. Elaine nodded. That's what I wanted to remember. That somewhere out there, you were happy. She met my eyes. Even if it was without me. The simple statement broke something open inside me. All these years, I'd seen Elaine's attempts to connect as demands, as neediness. I'd never considered that she might simply want me to be happy, that her love might be that selfless. I'm sorry, I whispered, tears spilling down my cheeks. I'm so sorry, Elaine. She didn't rush to comfort me or dismiss my apology. She just nodded, acknowledging the debt that existed between us. I know. When the closet was empty, the photographs sorted, and the altar dismantled, We stood in the cleared space, both emotionally drained. What now? I asked. Elaine looked around the empty closet, then at me. Now I use this for what it's meant for: clothes and shoes and normal things. A small smile touched her lips. And maybe some of my photography equipment. And us? I hardly dared to ask. She was quiet for a long moment. I don't know, Sarah. I can't go back to how things were, orbiting around your life, grateful for whatever scraps of attention you toss my way. Her voice was firm, not angry. I deserve more than that. You do, I agreed. What do you want our relationship to be? She considered the question. Equal, she said finally. I want us to be equals, not big sister and little sister, not protector and protected. Just two adults who respect each other. It sounded simple, but I knew it wouldn't be. It would require me to dismantle patterns as deeply ingrained as the shrine in her closet, patterns of dismissal, of superiority, of thoughtless privilege. Could I do that? Looking at my sister, really seeing her, perhaps for the first time, I knew I had to try. Equal, I repeated, holding out my hand. I'd like that. She took my hand, her grip firm. It won't be easy. I know. I squeezed her fingers. But I think it will be worth it. As we stood in the empty closet, hands clasped, I felt something shift between us. Not forgiveness exactly, but possibility. A door opening where there had only been a wall. The next 6 months were a journey of rediscovery, not just of Elaine, but of myself. True to my word, I called every Sunday at 7. Sometimes our conversations were easy, filled with laughter and shared memories. Other times they were tense, as old patterns reasserted themselves and had to be consciously broken. One Sunday in early spring, Elaine mentioned a photography exhibition she'd be part of the following weekend. It's just a small community gallery, she said, her voice carefully casual. Nothing fancy. I'd love to come, I said immediately. What time? There was a pause. Really? It's on Saturday afternoon. You usually have the kids' activities then. The fact that she knew my weekend schedule better than I knew hers was a painful reminder of our imbalanced past. David can handle soccer for one weekend. This is important. Another pause. Okay, it starts at 3. The gallery is on Maple Street, near the old theater. That Saturday, I arrived at the gallery 20 minutes early, a small gift bag in hand. The space was modern and bright, with white walls and polished concrete floors. A sign at the entrance announced the exhibition, Unseen, Perspectives on the Overlooked, featuring works by 5 local photographers. I found Elaine's section easily. Her name was printed on a small placard, alongside an artist's statement that made my heart skip. These images explore the beauty that exists in the margins, the moments, places, and people we pass by without noticing. What might we see if we trained ourselves to look beyond the obvious? The photographs themselves took my breath away. A series of urban scenes, each focusing on something most would overlook. An elderly man feeding pigeons in a busy square, his face transcendent with joy while crowds streamed past unseeing. A wildflower growing through a crack in a parking lot. A child's lost mitten on a park bench, small and vulnerable in the vast space. They were beautiful, technically impressive, and infused with a sensitivity that was uniquely Elaine. How had I never known she was this talented? What do you think? I turned to find Elaine watching me nervously, dressed in a simple black dress I'd never seen before. They're incredible, I said honestly. I had no idea you were so gifted. A flush of pleasure colored her cheeks. Thank you. That means a lot. I handed her the gift bag. This is for you, to celebrate. She opened it curiously, pulling out a leather-bound day planner. She looked at me, confused. Open it, I urged. Inside, I'd marked 12 dates throughout the coming year, one for each month. Next to each date, I'd written a location. Redwood Forest, May 15th. Antelope Canyon, July 23rd. Acadia National Park, October 10th. I don't understand, she said. They're photography trips, I explained. Places you mentioned wanting to shoot someday. I've arranged everything: transportation, accommodations, local guides who know the best spots for photographers. I took a deep breath. And I thought, maybe I could come with you. Not to all of them. I know you might want some solitude, but to whichever ones you'd like company for. She stared at the planner, then at me. This must have cost a fortune. I shook my head. It's not about the money, Elaine. It's about time. Our time together, which should have been precious all along. I hesitated. Is it too much? I'm not trying to buy your forgiveness. Just, it's perfect, she interrupted, her eyes shining with tears. It's the most thoughtful gift anyone's ever given me. Relief washed through me. So you'll let me come along? At least for some? She smiled, a real smile, open and unguarded. I'd like that. But Sarah, she touched my arm. You don't need grand gestures. Just being here today, seeing my work, really seeing it, that's what matters. As the gallery filled with people, I watched Elaine move among them, explaining her process, accepting compliments with quiet grace. She caught my eye occasionally, and each time, a small smile passed between us, a private acknowledgement of something new taking root. Later, as we shared a celebratory dinner at a nearby restaurant, Elaine asked about the kids, and for once, I kept my answer brief before turning the conversation back to her work. The photograph of the old man with the pigeons, I said. There was something so peaceful about his expression. How did you capture that? She lit up, describing how she'd visited that square for weeks, watching him, waiting for the perfect moment when the light and his expression aligned. Her passion was contagious, her knowledge impressive. You really love this, don't you? I observed. It's the only thing that's ever made complete sense to me, she admitted. Looking at the world through a lens, it helps me process it, make meaning of it. I think I'm starting to understand that, I said. About you, I mean, how you see things differently. She studied me for a moment. You know what the irony is? All those years I spent watching your life from a distance, taking photographs of moments I wasn't part of. It was painful, but it made me a better artist. She swirled her wine thoughtfully. Sometimes I wonder if I should thank you for excluding me. The statement hung between us, not quite accusation, not quite absolution. I'd rather thank you for not giving up on me, I said finally, even when I deserved it. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand briefly. We're family, the real kind, not just the obligatory kind. At least, that's what I'm hoping we can be. Me too, I said, meaning it more than I'd ever meant anything. As we walked back to our cars after dinner, Elaine paused under a streetlight, the soft glow illuminating her face. There's something I've been meaning to tell you. My heart raced. What is it? I'm leaving my publishing job, going freelance with my photography full-time. Pride surged through me. Elaine, that's wonderful. When? End of the month. She took a deep breath. And I'm moving. I found a small house outside the city with amazing natural light and space for a proper darkroom. That's a big change. I tried to keep my voice neutral, fighting the instinct to question her decision or offer unsolicited advice. She nodded. It is, but it feels right. She hesitated. The house has a guest room. Not fancy, but comfortable. Your family would be welcome any time. The invitation, so carefully extended, felt like a precious gift. We'd love that. Maybe for a weekend this summer? I'd like that. She smiled, then checked her watch. I should go. Marcus is coming over to help me sort through which pieces to keep from the exhibition. We hugged goodbye, a real embrace, not the perfunctory kind we'd exchanged at family gatherings for years. As I watched her walk to her car, silhouetted against the evening sky, I realized something profound. I liked my sister. Not just loved her out of obligation, but genuinely liked the person she was. It had taken a locked closet, a mental health crisis, and months of difficult conversations to get here. But standing on that sidewalk, watching Elaine drive away toward her new life, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, perhaps ever, regarding my sister. Pride unmixed with condescension, love unmixed with duty, and something else, something that felt like hope. 2 years later, I stood in Elaine's gallery, yes, her gallery, not just a small section in someone else's space, surrounded by her most ambitious exhibition yet. Connections explored relationships of all kinds through diptychs, paired images that spoke to each other across space. The centerpiece of the show was a large diptych titled Sisters. On the left, a photograph from our childhood, me at 10, Elaine at 5, sitting on our parents' porch steps. I had my arm around her shoulders, both of us squinting into the sun. On the right, a recent image, the two of us on the rim of the Grand Canyon at sunrise, one of our photography trips. In both images, we were connected, but the quality of that connection had visibly transformed, from protection to partnership. It's strange seeing our relationship on display like this, I murmured to Elaine as we stood before it. Too personal? She asked, concerned. No, I said thoughtfully. Just true in a way that's almost uncomfortable. You captured everything. What we were, what we became, what we are now. She smiled. That's what I do. See the truth and frame it in a way others can access. You're remarkable at it. I meant it sincerely. The gallery was packed with admirers, collectors, and critics. Elaine moved among them with confidence that would have been unimaginable 3 years ago. Her work was selling well. She'd been featured in several prestigious photography magazines. She was, by any measure, successful. But the real success, to my mind, was less visible. The way she carried herself now, the clarity in her eyes, the absence of that desperate need for approval that had once defined her. She had become fully herself, and in doing so, had helped me become a better version of myself as well. My phone buzzed with a text from David. Kids are getting restless. Okay to take them for ice cream? We'll be back for closing. I showed Elaine the message. Do you need me to stay? Go, she said, easily. Spend time with them. I've got this covered. As I made my way through the crowd, I passed Marcus, who gave me a genuine smile, a far cry from the hostility of our first interaction. She's amazing, isn't she? He said, nodding toward Elaine. Always was, I replied. I just didn't have the sense to notice. Outside, I found David with Tyler and Emma on a bench across the street. At 13 and 10, they were growing so fast it sometimes took my breath away. Aunt Elaine's pictures are cool, Tyler said as we walked toward the ice cream shop. The one of us in the treehouse is my favorite. Mine too, Emma agreed. Can we sleep over at her house next weekend? She said she'd teach me how to develop film in her darkroom. If she offered, then yes, I said, smiling at their enthusiasm. 3 years ago, they'd barely known their aunt. Now she was an integral part of their lives, the cool aunt who took them hiking and taught them to see the world differently. Later that night, after the exhibition closed and the last guests departed, Elaine and I sat on the floor of her gallery, shoes off, sharing a bottle of champagne. To success, I toasted. To seeing what matters, she countered, clinking her glass against mine. We drank in comfortable silence, surrounded by images that told stories of connection and disconnection, presence and absence, love and loss. Do you ever think about that closet? I asked suddenly. The shrine? She considered the question. Sometimes. Not with shame anymore, but as a reminder. Of what? Of how far I've come. Of how desperate I was for connection. She looked at me directly. Of how close I came to giving up. A chill ran through me at the memory of what could have been lost. I'm glad you didn't. Me too. She set down her glass. You know what's strange? In some ways, that shrine saved me. Creating it gave me a way to feel connected when real connection seemed impossible. It was unhealthy, yes, but it kept me going until I could find healthier ways to belong. I thought about that. How sometimes the very things that seem most broken about us are actually desperate attempts at survival. How what looks like madness from the outside might be the only path through unbearable pain. I have something for you, Elaine said, reaching into her bag. She pulled out a small wrapped package. I was going to wait until your birthday, but tonight feels right. I unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a small leather-bound album. Opening it, I found photographs I'd never seen before, Elaine and me throughout the years, from childhood to present. But these weren't the posed holiday photos or forced family portraits I was familiar with. These were quiet moments. Elaine and me reading on the couch as teenagers, backs touching. The two of us laughing in the kitchen at Mom's last Thanksgiving. A recent image of our shadows on a hiking trail, elongated and connected. I don't remember most of these being taken, I said, puzzled. Most weren't, In the traditional sense, Dad took that one of us reading. She pointed to the teenage image. Mom took the Thanksgiving one, the hiking one I set up with a timer. She touched the album gently. I wanted you to see that we've always had moments of real connection, even when it felt like we didn't. They were just easy to miss. Tears filled my eyes as I turned the pages, seeing our shared history through her lens, not the shrine of an outsider looking in, but the record of someone who had always been part of my story, even when I failed to acknowledge it. "Thank you," I whispered, "for not giving up on us." She smiled, a full, genuine smile that reached her eyes. Some connections are worth fighting for, even when they seem broken beyond repair. As we sat in the quiet gallery, surrounded by images of connection, I thought about the locked closet that had started our journey back to each other. How something so painful could lead to something so healing. How seeing, really seeing, another person might be the greatest gift we can offer. And I thought about my sister, not as the fragile, needy person I'd once reduced her to, but as the strong, talented, compassionate woman she'd always been, waiting for me to notice. Outside, the city hummed with life. Inside, in the space Elaine had created, we sat shoulder to shoulder, two sisters who had found their way back to each other through darkness into light. Not perfect, not without scars, but present, connected, seen.